Hey guys, Angela here, and welcome back to another Hobby Night episode. This week, I thought we were going to be talking to you about unit coherency and a couple of the other things that GW was going to be releasing, and then the entire rules got leaked. So GW released the entire rules, and we went ahead and looked through them and decided we were going to play our first game of 9th edition, and I had a blast with it. We're going to go ahead and talk to you about our experience and thoughts on the new edition, so let's go ahead and get to it. We played our first game of 9th edition this weekend, and I have to say, I'm really liking it so far. The rules seem to make sense. There's definitely some things that I need to remember to pay attention to, specifically like unit coherency and the character targeting. I think are going to be things that I really am going to need to focus on. But overall, I really had fun with it, and I'm really liking the changes that they've made to the new edition. What do you think so far, John?
So I've also very much enjoyed it. So to give a little bit of context, we just played a very small mission. We just played a patrol mission around 500 points or about 25 power if you're going by narrative. And we did Death Guard versus Space Marines.
Running the Hobby Knights, of course.
Yes, Imperial Fists. Just to be very specific.
Yep.
And it's funny that you bring up you need to pay attention to character placement, because I was the one who got screwed over by that one.
Well, to be fair, you only got screwed over by it because you were correcting me on it. Well, not correcting, but you were being like, oh, remember, don't forget that guy. You need to make sure he's within this, because it was my Plague Surgeon. And then you forgot to do that for your own Librarian. And then I was able to hit him, and it was... it was a thing.
Yeah, the ball launchers were fun.
They were. I did, in fact, win this first game that we've played. It was awesome and very exciting for me. So I'm very, very happy about that. But yeah, the terrain usage was really good. The cohesion or the coherency is the thing that's going to trip me up the most, because I tend to... Like my Poxwalkers, for example, I'm still going to probably run them. I'm probably going to run them only as 10-man units, maybe not doing my full 20, depending on like what we see with...
No, definitely not with the last
Not with the current stuff that we've seen with the rules and how it's played so far. So definitely thinking much smaller units, but I definitely think they're going to still have their value, but I really need to pay attention to their coherency with that, because I just don't want to lose ones unnecessarily. Especially if I actually end up being able to bring units back in or models back in when I'm killing things in melee with them potentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's definitely going to be something to keep in mind.
Speaking to more specific rules, starting with the terrain. So I have had the concern, I think from the very first preview, that maybe GW was throwing too many keywords. And I will admit that I don't think they have.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they have. If you watch like the very first news vlog, I talked about this, and I know a few people were like, what? About it. But it's still one of those things of I'm still not so much concerned about the keywords as I am finickiness of it all.
There is a little bit of finickiness with some of the stuff, and I will definitely admit that, but I do think that
and I'm speaking from I just want to clarify, I'm
yeah.
speaking from a casual play perspective, not the
we're not competitive players at all. Like we play in local tournaments, but it's at my local game store, and while the tournaments are very fun and competitive, they're not competitive in the way that like ITC or whatever would be.
Oh, absolutely. And more, I'm just thinking about like casual younger players.
Yes.
And yes, you can play an abridged version of the game, obviously ignoring certain rules, but so sue me. I grew up as a kid who got to play Warhammer with everybody. I just want to make sure that the game doesn't become obtuse for brand new players.
Yeah, no, and that is definitely something that I don't want to have happen.
But we're really beating around the bush. Talk about your actual experience with the terrain.
So the terrain actually, I thought functioned pretty well. The foundation of what 8th edition brought in, I think was all there. Like most things do still function relatively as you would expect them to, which I think is the nicest thing about it. I feel that 9th edition's terrain, when you look at the rules and you see what they do and you see what the keywords are specifically tied to, it just makes sense what those things do, like obscuring, for example. You know, that is the one that I think ended up having the biggest factor in our game that we played. And I really liked being able to use that keyword to my advantage, being able to hide some units behind a building that they weren't in, but they were being blocked by it, so you couldn't actually shoot them, and it actually protected some of my units. So it's nice to see some of those rules come into play a little bit more, because at least in my experience with 8th, I didn't have as much use of terrain, or I didn't use it as well, and now I feel like I'm using it better.
Yeah, because it's sort of gone from that situation of terrain being a whole bunch of different things to in 8th it was just it's either on or it's off. It's on or it's off.
Yeah.
And you get a cover save, obviously, was functional. And I definitely agree that it needed more depth than what it had.
And they definitely have more depth now.
Yeah, the one I am curious about at the end of the day is woods.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna really work. I mean, we're definitely gonna
I know how it's gonna work. I've seen the rules.
Well, no, I know how it's gonna work. I just don't know how it's gonna feel on a battlefield, because I've actually not played with woods very often. Even in 8th edition, I don't actually know.
Well, woods would have just been cover in 8th edition.
Yeah.
They didn't really do anything.
Well, we didn't really have that much of it on there, so it was like we almost never used it because it didn't really go with our boards. So now that they actually have more specific rules that are tied to it and everything, it'll be interesting to see it on the board, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll be encouraged to build some locally. What I'm more thinking about is people who have always had forests.
Right.
And I know for a lot of other game stores, having forests is a much more common occurrence because old fantasy games and things like that.
Totally.
And looking at it, like, forests are darn powerful. They have the disadvantage of they slow you down, which I find funny compared to ruins. It's like apparently a space marine just doesn't know how to behave around nature. But
I mean, they're clearly not around nature very often being from hive worlds, death worlds, or really
similar
like
terrible
worlds
places,
or whatever.
yeah, or being spaceborne.
Yeah, or being spaceborne,
yes.
Exactly.
But it's one of those cases of it's heavy cover. I think it's light cover as well. I think it counts for both.
I think it
gives
does.
you defense in melee and shooting. It slows down things charging through it, and I think it's obscuring. I don't remember off the top of my head, but
I do think it's obscuring if it's over the 5 inches.
And it's woods, so
right.
I can't imagine if you have trees. Chances are they're probably over 5
well,
inches.
Well, and they're like dense. Isn't that also? Did we cover that one?
Yeah, I think that's the slowdown.
Okay, yeah, and it's not. Is it just charging or is it just movement?
Movement and charging.
Yeah, your movement through it is just slowed down, which is, yeah, it's gonna be weird to move through things. That is going to, I think, maybe prevent people sometimes from going through them, depending on, like, I, for example, don't know if I'd want to go through woods.
Well, your death guard.
Because I'm already slow. So I don't want to reduce my normal movement of, say, a plague marine from 5 to 3. Like, that would be terrible. So, like, I may not use it, but I'm curious to see if, like, the faster armies just don't care because it doesn't really affect them because they have such great, like, such large
firing
movements.
Squads in them too, like heavy devastators.
Yeah, once you're in there too, if you just sit in there, that could be interesting too, because then you can shoot out of it fine.
Exactly.
You would just be protected. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and really, it's very strange because, I make the joke that suddenly Space Marines are not, very comfortable in the woods compared to cities. Mm-hmm. But now it makes me want, like, them to redo the Dark Angels. And if you know Dark Angel lore, their homeworld is an entire forest planet.
Right, because aren't they supposed to be, like, knights and stuff?
Yes.
Like classic knights?
Well, they had, like, a very wooded death world. And so now we're just going to slowly transform the Dark Angels into wood elves.
Oh my goodness. GW, get on it.
The next biggest change that I did not have to deal with very much because I was playing Space Marines, but I can imagine when I return to my necrotic boys that it's going to come up again, and that is unit coherency.
Yes, this is something, like I said a little earlier, the thing that I have to pay attention to, I think, the most, because I tend to run larger blobs. Coherency has definitely changed. When they announced the rules, you and I were going through with some Poxwalkers and Space Marines of, like, different ways to lay things out to start so that they would be within cohesion of each other at the beginning with their full big blobs. Because once you get past the 5, it's not a big deal, but anything over that, you have to make sure that, they're within 2 inches of, what is it, 2 models?
2 other models.
Or 2 other models. So we were going through a bunch of different things, and we tried, like, the dumbbell first, and we were like, oh yeah, this will be fine. And then we were like, oh
1 minion,
no.
the entire line falls apart.
And then the entire line falls apart. So that's something. Now, I do have the slight benefit of, I was really bad about daisy chaining, so I tended to do 2 ranks for my Poxwalkers, but now I really actually need to pay attention to that, so it's definitely something I'm going to work on for 9th edition, because I want to make sure that I'm maximizing the models in the units as much as I can, and they're only being lost to actually being killed by the enemy and not because of my own mistakes.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested because when I return to my actual Necrons, whenever we finally get the new release, you know, they're really pushing these 20, you know, these 10, 20 man Necron units.
Oh yeah, because I mean, like Indomitus comes with what?
20.
20 unit or 20 models. Exactly.
10-man units. And so, I mean, I can't imagine I'm ever going to want to run 11 or more at this point, between the nerf that they did to assault distance, like the half-inch versus the full inch. For
yeah,
attacks.
That is going to be
that's going to hurt hordes plus everything else. I mean, Games Workshop is obviously going for a smaller, faster game, and they're definitely succeeding at it. And I think the coherency thing is just going to push many more small units. Really.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a large number of small or minimum unit sizes, which, I mean, could be interesting because the boards are going to be smaller. Maybe we're just going to see the minis more spread out. I mean, all the secondary and objectives and stuff kind of also work into that. So it'll be very, very interesting.
And then there is the rule that is going to bite me in the butt more than any other, and that is the new character targeting rule.
Yes. It's also going to actually be very important for me to pay attention to, considering Death Guard have a lot of characters.
You do, and your Demon Princes will be much harder to screen now.
And I was already really bad about doing that in the first place, so it'll be interesting. But it did kind of hurt you in our game. I think we mentioned that a little bit.
I misplayed it every way possible yesterday. I deployed a librarian carrying a relic for buffing reasons. Between two squads, because he had a 6-inch bubble.
Yep.
He was 6 inches away from them, which means he wasn't near anything, but I thought it was like, it's fine, there are two squads closer to the enemy, because I just wasn't even thinking. So turn one, he takes a blight launcher to the face.
Yep, and I think I took a fair number of wounds off him, if I remember correctly, too, because I think he didn't do well in the saves.
5 in one shot.
Yep, but to be fair, he did live up until the Demon Prince got into him.
He did survive for quite a while, but then later in the game, I completely misplayed it again and didn't target your Demon Prince with shooting because there was a single Poxwalker standing in front of him.
That is true. I did notice that
Sir,
one, and
I will see
admit,
the target. He's standing behind that small, scrawny zombie. Are you talking about the 12-foot tall, fat, bloated Nurgle demon? Yes, sir. Okay.
Yep, just can't see him. He's, there's this wonderful blind spot.
Hey,
but like, you were stuck in 8th edition rule set, and that's all that really happened with that. And I imagine a lot of people are going to have that happen, they're going to remember the 8th edition stuff and forget that, nope, we're playing 9th edition now. We got to pay attention to where those characters are because they are so much more vulnerable now, and we need them to live because they do all their buffing stuff. Because, like, between the fact that you can super buff characters using CP now and basically making them a lot more elite than they were, like, that makes them even more valuable, so you want to make sure you're definitely protecting them.
Yeah, because I could just... One of the things I was just thinking about was... I years ago, and I think this was before you started playing.
Okay.
Characters joined squads.
I do remember that.
Okay.
I do remember that. I don't remember if I used it.
I think you did.
Did 5th edition have it?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
I think you might be right.
It makes me miss it a tiny amount, but I think that's mostly just because it bit me twice yesterday, and so I'm just feeling grumpy about it.
Oh, I totally believe that.
Yeah. Last, but most certainly not least, we have the updated mission structure and just the new missions in general.
Yes.
So, this is really, at the end of the day, we've talked about a lot of theory crafting. A lot of people have talked theory crafting. We've talked how good are the Outriders in killing, yada, yada, yada.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, I think it's not going to matter nearly as much as these new missions are going to matter.
No, and I think 8th already was doing that. I think 9th is emphasizing it even further because the missions are really, 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 really what are going to end up winning, I think, the games. Like, your secondaries are definitely going to help. Obviously. And there are definitely secondaries that are all about killing your opponent and wiping out as many units as possible, but I don't think that is going to be the main thing that people are going to be able to focus on
Well,
in
here's
9th
the thing
edition
about
necessarily.
that. It still can be. So let's say your
I guess that's
space
true.
wolves, your corn berserkers.
Mm-hmm.
You can make all your objectives about aggression up the board and killing things.
Yeah, I guess that's true. And I'm
But-
sure that they'll get specific stuff like that for, like in their codexes and stuff.
Exactly. Games Workshop has said every codex is going to have new secondaries that's going to be tied to the specific armies.
Yes.
And so what that tells me is like, yeah, maybe the corn berserkers are a lot more killy.
Mm-hmm.
Or, if you were just to play 2,000 points, kill each other,
Mm-hmm.
one side would win.
Right.
That could be a situation that occurs. But because one of those sides has a bunch of secondary objectives that play very well into their defensive or their psychic or into their maneuverability,
Yes.
they're going to be so much more likely to win. Now, the primary objectives being normally the easier to score,
Right.
are still probably going to lean toward... I mean, it's Warhammer. You still need to kill things in the game.
Oh,
That's Warhammer.
100%. But I do think that between the smaller board sizes, the missions all seem to be placing their objectives a lot closer to each other from what we've seen, like in the book and everything.
Right.
So it's really interesting that I feel like controlling those and doing all those secondary objectives and all the things that you choose, it's really going to matter playing your mission more along with your secondaries rather than just being a beat 'em up sort of thing.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and I tried to do that against you because I was playing a very Phobos heavy Marine
Yeah,
list.
you were very aggressive.
And so I went for because the way the mission objectives worked in this game is once you held them even if you weren't standing near them.
Yeah.
So my thought was get Phobos on them early, and then basically fight basically have a fighting retreat.
Yes.
Where I fall back away from the Death Guard, who are way slower, and sort of fight them off. And hope that I can win victory points. What I did not estimate or did not account for was the fact that the Demon Prince is still 8 inches without his wings.
Yep.
I thought he was slower without his wings.
He is not.
Mm-hmm.
He is not slower without his wings. He just isn't as. I mean, it's not that he's not as mobile. I guess I don't know. I don't really know if the wings are going to be nearly as important for that
They
unit
will.
anymore. Well, they will, but he may not be my warlord as often anymore. So I don't know like how often I might I don't know if I'm going to necessarily use the wings, despite the fact that I've sculpted him with wings. Obviously,
It's a good point, because you'd be giving up a Warlord kill if your Demon Princes are just going to be charging forward now.
right? And I kind of want them to, because we put the Epic Demic Blade on my Demon Prince, and
Oh, yeah.
oh my god, that thing is so good.
That's an auto take. I think like every Death Guard list
Yeah,
is auto taking that now.
absolutely. Like if you're running Death Guard and if you're running a Demon Prince, you
It's
absolutely
worth
must
a CP.
take that.
It's worth a CP.
I
I think your 4 attacks did like 8 hits to me.
Nine.
Between
Yeah.
between Death to the False Emperor and its special ability. Oh,
yeah, it was, and I charged you that turn, so I got an extra attack from that.
yeah, that thing
Well,
will rip tanks apart.
I'm excited for it. Which we didn't actually use any tanks in our battle, so we haven't seen how the vehicle rules or monster rules really work yet.
You
but...
used a monster. You had the monster creature.
Oh, I guess I did. Is the Demon Prince monster?
Yes.
I guess it is. I've completely gotten off track of what I was talking about.
We were talking about mission structure.
We were talking about mission structure.
And here's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting the Death Guard Codex is going to drop,
Mhm.
and you're going to have objectives tied to like either units dying
Yes.
in particular ways, or units making disgustingly resilient throws. Like, it makes sense. What do? The Poxwalkers die within engagement distance of an enemy unit. Gain victory points for that because they're spreading the plague.
That would be really cool.
Like that, and that's a way they can also offset things like if cultists are going up in points, I expect Poxwalkers will go up in points.
Yep.
But if there's suddenly an objective that's tied to Poxwalkers dying,
Then I may still want to bring like larger units so that more have a chance to die. I just need to, again, pay attention to the unit coherency.
right? And I think and I think it's a really easy, obvious one. It's like if this unit dies, is destroyed within engagement with an enemy infantry unit,
Mm-hmm.
gain X number of victory points at the end of your turn because they die and they spread
Necrons could have a
stuff
cool
everywhere.
one that does a similar thing, but for resurrection. Like,
I'm trying the fiction of like resurrecting enough guys or repairing enough stuff.
Yeah, repairing enough stuff, or like bringing in new troops through like teleportation.
Teleportation
maybe.
would be really cool. Yeah,
Like,
Necron stuff could be very much tied to location on battlefield.
Right, which could be very cool. It's going to be interesting to see what those secondary objectives end up being for all the various codexes. Because right now they're feeling they're generic. Like, the ones that are in the book are your generalized secondary objectives that everybody can take, so they're not going to be super interesting or really very, very exciting. But when we start getting into the unique ones, that I think is when it's going to be very cool. Those were our thoughts based off of our first battle with 9th edition on the new missions and a variety of the other rules that we were able to play with and everything. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. Have you been able to play a 9th edition game yet? Are you super excited for it like we are? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on Monday for a painting video.